Hi, I'm Anjali Mehra, and you're listening to Sweet Success.
You've just checked in to Sweet Success. Join me, Katie Cline, for exclusive conversations with hotel executives, hospitality leaders, and industry innovators. Together, we'll uncover the strategies and techniques these masters of hospitality relentlessly refine. Whether you're already in the industry or just starting out, tune in every week to unlock the secret to your sweet success. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sweet Success. I'm your host, Katie Cline, and today I am thrilled to have the wonderful Anjali Mehra on the show. Anjali is a seasoned hospitality, brand marketing, and communications professional, most recently serving as the Chief Brand Officer and Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Leela Palaces Hotels and Resorts. I had the absolute pleasure of working with Anjali at both Starwood and Marriott. At Starwood, she spearheaded marketing and communications for the company in South Asia, including Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and her native India. And at Marriott, she led PR and communications in the Middle East and Africa while based in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. She's a true industry expert, having started her career in aviation and having also worked for other hotel companies, including Taj and Hilton. She recently launched Reef Knot Consulting, an integrated brand marketing and communications consultancy that helps luxury brands strategically launch and position themselves across global markets. Anjali, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Katie, for having me on the show. It's such a pleasure to be here and to chat with you once again.
It's always so great to see you. And I know I covered a lot in that introduction, but from your perspective, tell us how you got started in hospitality.
So it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it a little short. I wanted to be a pilot. I couldn't. So I did the next best thing, which was to marry a pilot and work for an airline. So I started my career with aviation. And from there, when the first phase of domestic Indian aviation started to go down, I transitioned into hotels. My father was in the army, so I traveled a lot as a child. And I think the few things that are intrinsic to the armed forces, which is entertaining, socializing, travel, that became inherent in me as I was growing up. So I naturally gravitated towards the hospitality industry when it was time. I don't think there was a choice. I didn't have time to think about it. I think it was a very natural progression. Today, when I look back, I like to say that my blood group is H positive, hospitality positive. I don't think I would have had it any other way.
It's amazing. It's a calling, right? More than a choice, as you put it. And
Yeah.
with your father being in the army, you said you moved around a lot as a child. I know your career's taken you from Delhi to Abu Dhabi to Mumbai. How do you think living in these different places shaped your understanding of hospitality, of later communications, and also of yourself?
So I think firstly, travel is extremely enriching. It teaches you so much. It is an immersion into different cultures and it really widens your horizon and perspective. I don't think there can be any other more enriching way of learning than to travel and experience different cultures, different cities, different food habits than and traditions than travel. When I was growing up, because of the nature of my father's job, I never lived in a city for more than 2 years. I didn't go to a school to the same school for more than 2 years. So I think change and being able to cope with change also came with those years of growing up. I think travel also teaches you to be very tolerant and helps you understand the different nuances as you travel from one region to another. And in communications, you would know this better than me. We always say that the messaging needs to be tweaked to your audience. And what better way to really understand your audience than traveling and living and experiencing the local culture? And then to write those stories or tell those stories that really resonate and to tell them in a far more compelling manner. I think personally, for me, what travel also did was it taught me a lot about diversity around the world. It taught me a lot about the amount of beauty that exists all around you. And it just helped me with a global view of everything that one was doing. And I think today, when I look back, a lot of experiences that we've created with the different brands that I've worked at, I think those years of traveling and living and working in different cities across the world have helped me make them far more relevant to the audience. And sometimes it's the same message, but it's just tweaked differently, or the same experience, which is enhanced or tweaked a little bit so that it resonates in the countries where it is being implemented. So I think that is what travel has really taught me.
I couldn't agree more. And, that was a lot of my motivation for moving to the UK. I felt like I was sitting in these global, quote, global roles here in New York. And yes, I had traveled, but really when you move, that's when you start to really get under the skin of a destination, right? And you talked about how you never lived in one place for more than 2 years and how change is this constant, right?
Yeah.
And that is something we saw not only in crisis communications, but in everything that we dealt with, particularly around the pandemic, right? In the hospitality industry. And I know that you decided to move back to India from Abu Dhabi during the pandemic. So talk about big change all around, right? How was that transition for you coming home after being away for so long?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people also ask you, what did you do during the pandemic? And people took to different things. I took two of the biggest decisions of my life during the pandemic. One was to move back to India, and the second was to quit my career with Starwood and Marriott after 15 years and move to the Leela Palaces hotels and resorts. And I think it was a big change. I moved countries, I moved jobs, and the world around us was, we all know, completely bizarre. And we had to live through those existential times. So it was just that I wanted to come back home, be closer to family. My parents were getting older, and I just needed to be around them. And I think the second big motivation was the opportunity that came with the Leela Palaces hotels and resorts. It was an incredible opportunity. The brand was going through a transition, and we'll talk about it in some time. But I think it was just that opportunity was so compelling that I took that decision. I think coming home is never difficult. It's always coming back to your roots. You pick up the pieces where you left them, and that's exactly what happened with me. Again, in the field that you and I are, it's all about relationships. So it was very easy to pick up those relationships and then start to build on them from where we had left off. And only this time, I think I had a far more richer background and experience, having worked in the Middle East and overseen Africa and the Middle East, which were very, very challenging markets and very different from India and Asia Pacific, which I was used to. So I think I was a little wiser and had a far more global perspective in the true sense of the word global.
I agree in the sense that it's in a way easy to come home, but you're right, like we've changed while we're away. So
Yeah.
I had a very similar situation where we moved back to my same
Mhm.
neighborhood in New York City, literally like 7 blocks down from where we used to live.
Yeah,
And in so many ways, everything was the same, except I was this completely different human, right? So
exactly.
for you, you had had such an incredible experience living in such a different place. And now you come home and you have this incredible role with Leela. So what was your remit there and how did you approach that now with this global view?
So I think my move with Leela came at a very, very opportune time. And there were reasons why I took it at the time that I did also. And I'll highlight about, firstly, the brand was going through a financial crisis because of which it had just been taken over by a marquee global sponsor. So there were three things that became really, really the reason for me to be able to take that decision to move. I saw an opportunity. It was an incredible brand. It had an incredible legacy. The remit there was build on that legacy, retain and preserve what Leela has been known for, and build on it. I was fortunate because we now were backed by a global sponsor who had the funds to be able to invest in the brand. And I think I got all the support that I needed. So you just had to come up with a creative idea which was aligned with the brand. And of course, there were a lot of questions asked. It was a private equity firm at the end of the day. But those questions were very valid. And I think those questions also made you think differently because we had the blinders of a hospitality industry always on. And here was a private equity firm which was making you and forcing you to think differently, which probably you hadn't thought of before. So it was a very enriching experience. But the moment you came up with an idea and you were able to sell the idea, they were willing to invest in it. And that's why I think we were able to do some really incredible stuff. It was very clear that they wanted Leela to be the epitome of true Indian luxury and be recognized globally. And I think when I look back now, it's extremely gratifying to see what the last 4 years for the Leela brand has been.
You have touched on so many interesting things in that example alone. I mean, having an ownership group that supports marketing and
Yep.
communication, first of all, we know is so special right there. And
Yes.
I agree with everything you said. We should have to defend our ideas, but then once we do so, let us try it. And I think that's what we had so magically at Starwood was that ability to test and
Exactly.
learn and the ability to fail sometimes and say, "Okay, that didn't really work, so now we know
Yep.
for next time we're not gonna try that." Something you also touched on was luxury, and I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like India has really set the benchmark for luxury hospitality, Leela Palaces being a large part of that. This is now starting
Yep.
to be really recognized on a global stage. So from someone who has taken that legacy of the brand and built upon it, what does luxury mean to you?
Luxury means different things to different people. Of course, it is about exclusivity, it's about those special experiences, it's about craftsmanship. Uh, but I think for me, luxury is a lot more about the intangible than the tangible. It is not about acquiring or possessing a luxury product, be it a bag or a garment or walking into a lobby that is absolutely ostentatious. For me, it's about the experiences, about how that makes you really feel. And personally, for me, luxury, and especially now at the stage that I am in, it means to be able to do what you really want to do and like to do in your own time and space. And I don't think many people have the luxury of being able to do it. So when you do, you must make the most of it. I think it's that feeling that really makes you. It's like a self gratification. It's you owe it to yourself, and it's about feeling very very special when you do that.
We're living in almost an experience economy now, right?
Yeah,
And it almost has become an overused buzzword, but you couldn't be more spot on in the sense of it's personalized, right? And luxury to you might mean something different to me. It might mean something different to somebody else. So, are there any players in the hospitality world, the hotel world, or maybe even beyond that, that you feel like are doing luxury right? Is there a right way to do luxury? And if so, how are they achieving that?
again, I think it is luxury means different things to different people. I repeat that because for different brands, it's all about their positioning and who they want to be to whom. And I think that really defines what they do. To talk about a few, I think there's a lot of great brands that do an amazing job. In fashion, for example, a brand that I admire a lot is Hermes. I think LVMH has a nice set of brands, whether it's Louis Vuitton or whether it's Dior. They do an excellent job there. If you see the automobile world, there is Tesla. Innovation is their buzzword, but they're doing an amazing job in positioning themselves as well. I think you look at watches and you've got Rolex. And coming back to hospitality, one of my favorite brands is Aman. I think it's minimalistic, but it's highly experiential, and they've stayed true to who they are, irrespective of where they open the hotel around the world. Of course, it's relevant to the market, but they haven't moved away from the DNA of the brand. And I think that is the mark of a really well positioned, strong luxury brand. So that is one of the brands. There's also Mandarin Oriental. I think they do an amazing job. And then we have the three Indian brands, which we've been talking about, setting global benchmarks. There is Taj, there is Oberoi, and of course the Leela, which have been featured in every credible list, so to say, whether it's the Condé Nast Traveler or the Travel and Leisure. And to have all of these three brands in the top 10 and do it consistently speaks volumes of the kind of benchmark that Indian luxury has set around the world.
A quick side note, featured in all of those lists, no doubt because they had a brilliant marketing and communications leader, but
Thank
um
you for that.
speaking of the 3 Indian brands in that top, luxury subset,
Yes.
depending upon what list you consult, India has either the largest or the second
Yeah.
largest population in the world. And I actually read that Indians are set to become the fourth largest global travel spenders by 2030.
Uh-huh.
That was a report I think that Booking.com and McKinsey had done together. So when being on the front lines of it yourself, when you were with Leela, what do you think hotels or short-term rental owners can be thinking about when catering to the Indian traveler?
I think there's no better learning than to actually live and experience the country before you start targeting it. You and I have experienced that with Starwood when we spoke a little bit about, I mean, we did the relocation to China, we did the relocation to Dubai, we were planning the relocation to India. I think that was a brilliant idea. For me, that was one of the biggest learnings and also the biggest regrets that we couldn't go through with it. But I think the idea of having to live in that country as a local to understand what the country really means and what is important to the people there and how they conduct themselves every day, what are their motivations, what are their needs, what are their aspirations, will help brands tweak their offering and really target the Indian customer. And I know sometimes it's really difficult to be able to do it. Not every brand is like Starwood, but and that idea may be a very, very lofty and ambitious idea for a lot of companies to execute, but having local knowledge or people who have local knowledge who can help you navigate the country that you're targeting, whether it is for inbound or even outbound. Again, from Starwood, you would remember how we targeted the Chinese traveler by doing that whole sensitization piece. I think Indian weddings, we did a lot of work at Starwood to sensitize hotels around the world on how to handle Indian weddings being so sensitive. So if you're really looking at targeting the Indian traveler, you have to understand what is important to the Indian traveler. What are their needs? What are their motivations? I don't think it's very different. It's the same with every country that you want to target.
Absolutely. And for the listeners, a bit of background on what Anjali is speaking about with Starwood was something I had never seen another company do. And yes, as you said, Anjali, lofty and ambitious, but every other year, the senior leadership team at Starwood would pick up and move to a really important emerging focus market for the company for a whole month. And so, as Anjali mentioned, we did this with China, we did this with Dubai, and we were in the midst of planning it with India when the company was acquired. It was, of course, not an easy thing, I would imagine, for the executives, but what an eye-opening experience. And as you said, Anjali, and you mentioned this earlier with your background and how much you've moved around, right? You never really understand a place until you live there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just so powerful. If we go back to branding for a minute, and you had talked about, the remit at Leela, taking that incredible legacy, building upon it. Really simple question. I imagine very complicated answer. How do you build a brand?
Very, very complex. Brand building is
Right.
extremely complex. I think it's an intentional process. It requires a lot of commitment. It requires belief in what you're doing, a lot of conviction. I also think that you need to have a long-term vision. There is a lot of strategic planning, a roadmap where you want to be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that long term vision. And you need the buy in of all your stakeholders, which I think is a very tricky part, because here the chain is as weak as its weakest link. One hotel, which is not on brand, can be a massive eroder of everything that you're trying to do. So it requires a lot of monitoring. It requires guardrails. It requires, if you get into tactics, it requires toolkits. It requires audits. It requires lot of checks for you to continue to see whether what you're trying to do is still relevant and resonates. And therefore, that understanding of consumer behavior, because consumers are evolving, the market's dynamics are changing, and your brand has to be relevant. It also has to be differentiated. Otherwise, you will just get mixed up in the sea of sameness. So it's a very, very complex, uh, process. I don't think there is an easy answer to that.
You just touched on detractors, right? The hotels that are kind
Yeah,
of pulling down the portfolio. And I know at Starwood, at Marriott, we would work with the owners to either suggest a renovation or perhaps change the
yeah.
flag to a different brand, or, if nothing else was going to work, exit the portfolio. Um, Differentiation as well when you're building a brand, right? How do you stand out in a very, very crowded marketplace? So, within brand building, when you think about positioning that brand and differentiating it, what does that mean and how do you do that effectively? Hey there, real estate lovers. Ever heard of Anywhere? I know you've seen their brands like Coldwell Banker and Century 21 on yard signs. Maybe even use their title, mortgage, or relocation companies. But listeners, Anywhere is way more than just buying and selling real estate. You can build a meaningful career with them too. They are an employer of choice in roles like brokerage management, operations, technology, marketing, and so many more impactful parts of the real estate transaction. Their hybrid workplace offers flexibility. Their national scale means offices everywhere. And their mix of businesses means you carve your own path. If you're curious how Anywhere empowers everyone's next move, visit www.anywhere.re.
I think positioning is what helps you stand out in that very competitive market and very, very crowded market, especially in the luxury space. Um, I think positioning defines who you are and who you want to be and to whom, in a nutshell. Um, but positioning must run through every touch point of the guest experience, as well as every piece of communication that is crafted, be it marketing, be it communication. So the stories you tell must be the stories you sell, but they must have that same golden thread running through. I think sometimes we lose that golden thread that needs to run through right up to the experience. So there is a guest who sees a beautiful ad or a film and comes to my website and has this lovely experience, gets immersed in it, gets hooked on, decides to purchase or make a decision and come and book his stay. But when they come to the hotel, the experience is very different. Then everything that you've done has gone down the drain. So the positioning must run through what we call in marketing the purchase funnel, every piece of that purchase funnel from beginning to end. I think strong brands do that extremely well. And that is what leads to loyalty beyond reason and makes them keep coming back again and again. It is that emotional connect which a solid brand positioning can do. Brands are not logos, brands are not colors, brands are living and breathing personas. They have a personality of their own. And you need to give it life, whether it's an activation, whether it's an event, whether it's an association, whether it's a piece of communication, everything.
Brands are living, breathing things, and they're also evolving things, right? Just like you said with
Yes.
your remit at Leela, who Leela was when they started versus who they are today has evolved, and that's a good thing, right? We don't want them to just stay stagnant. I loved what you said about you have to think about who you are and who you want to be and to whom, right? Because it's those brands who try to be all things to all people that end up
Yeah.
being nothing to anyone, right? So is there anyone, and this doesn't have to just be within hospitality, but is there any brand or company that you feel is doing branding particularly well?
I think it goes back to some of the brands that are already named. They all do a great job. I think Starwood did an excellent job in positioning their brands. And honestly, whatever I am today and whatever my knowledge of brand positioning and brand creation development is, it is thanks to the mentors that I had at Starwood. Look at W Hotels, look at St. Regis, look at Westin. They're very, very strongly positioned brands. You can almost walk into any of these hotels with your eyes closed and recognize what brand they are. And again, Aman, like I said, is a great brand. Look at Peninsula. I think they do a great job in branding. Look at Mandarin Oriental. And then, even if you're not talking hospitality, besides the fashion brands, look at Nike. I mean, every piece of communication that comes out of that brand, you know, it's a Nike communication. It's got that distinctive stamp. You don't even need to look at the logo because there is a distinctive point of view. And I think that distinctive point of view gives that, what we were talking about, the life to a brand and really makes it real, what people can connect with emotionally.
You mentioned W, and I think they're such a good example, right, of that distinctive point of view. And,
Right.
many people could walk into a W hotel and think, I absolutely hate this. And just
Yeah,
as many, if not more, might walk in and say, I absolutely love this. And I think sometimes that's what's missing in our space, right? Is it's okay for people who are not your target market to not like what you're doing.
exactly. And I think that speaks to the strength of the brand because you've chosen who you want to be and to whom. So your target audience has it's laser focused. So all your strategies, all your marketing and communication is not spray and pray. It's all going very targeted to the audience that you feel is the right target audience and with whom your brand will resonate.
And it goes back to what you were talking about with luxury in the first place, right? That personalization, knowing who
Yeah,
you are and what you want, just like brands, living, breathing things should know who they are and what they want.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. True.
Do you have any predictions for the future of hospitality?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Big question. Big one.
I think our space is evolving so fast, but let me touch upon three. I think the first one is sustainability. I think sustainability is more than a buzzword. I think today travelers are traveling with intent and purpose, and they're very conscious of the impact of their travel on the places and the people that they travel to. Um, and I think, therefore, hotels will have to rethink their sustainable practices. And it's more than throwing away the plastic bottle and replacing it with a glass bottle. I think that's a given, especially so in the luxury space. So, how sustainability is going to define design, experiences, Every touch point of a guest journey is going to impact uh, the hospitality industry in a very big way. Um, the second one, I think, is what we spoke about earlier, the experience economy. I think that is here to stay. And what COVID has done is it has really aggravated the YOLO effect. You only live once. I'm willing to pay a premium if you give me an experience like no other, if you really make me feel like royalty, like very, very special, then I will come for that experience. What we used to call money can't buy experiences, access like no other. Uh, I think that is going to get bigger and better in the industry, and people are going to go for those kind of experiences and pick the brands that really are able to craft a very distinctive point of view on the destination. So we've seen every destination have a number of brands, but what is your unique point of view? Why should I pick you over the others? What is it exclusive that you're going to give me? And I think at Leela, we tried to do that in some of the destinations, at least for our resorts, which worked really well. So I think that is going to be dialed up. And the third one, I think, is something that is being talked about a lot is AI. I think AI is again a buzzword. Yes, it's the fairy dust that hospitality really needed to bring that little magic of hospitality back. So everybody's talking about it. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's going to only help in personalization. I mean, one of the things that I think a lot about is probably AI can transform the whole concierge experience in hotels. So I think we'll wait and watch and see how much of that dust really settles down and what hotels can do with AI. But it'll be an interesting space to watch and see how it changes or transforms the hospitality industry.
Yeah, I am excited and slightly terrified as well.
Hospitality, I think, is a people business. I don't think that's ever going to change. What motivates people and how they behave and how they interact with brands will always remain. Service is at the core of everything we do, and people are there to give that service. They are the heart at the heart of what we live and do every single day. So I don't think any technology can replace that.
It's that blend of high tech and high touch. How can
High
we
tech and
use
high
tech
touch.
exactly, how can we use technology to empower the
Yeah,
humanness of a hospitality experience, right?
true. Yes.
Great. Well, Anjali, this has been so much fun. Obviously, it's fun for you and I to be in front of the camera, to be talking
Yeah.
when, as comms people, we're typically the ones behind the scenes whispering to our executives. We're going to move into the last three questions now that we ask everyone. And
Uh-huh.
firstly, I wanted to know, what was the best hospitality experience you've ever had?
Okay, so that is a tough one. I think we've just been so privileged to travel around the world, experience the best brands that they are, and we are pampered wherever we go. So it's really tough to pick the best of the best. I think destination wise, what you and I experienced in Bhutan was pretty special. And that always remains at the top of my list. I think it's a lot to do with the destination than the hotel. I think a lot of what I experienced in East and South Africa were pretty special. Uh, but two experiences, specific experiences with specific hotels which were on a personal holiday, which I would like to highlight. One is the St. Regis in Maldives, where me and my husband went for our 30th wedding anniversary. And the second is our 35th wedding anniversary at the Leela Palace, Udaipur. And I think both were a personal holiday, but they were very, very special and very special for two reasons. One, the personalization, the curated experiences, the attention to detail. And two, the thoughtful service and the amenities that were curated for you. So I think those two really stand out for me as two very special memories and experiences that I will always treasure throughout my life.
I had the privilege of staying at St. Regis Maldives for a few nights of my honeymoon and could not agree more. I will always think about that trip and the way that the hotel team just
Yeah,
overperformed for us, and at every single turn just made us feel so special and so seen. And like you said, it was an anniversary for you, it was a honeymoon for me. I imagine a majority of their guests are there for really big life events. So to make us each feel so special is just the
yeah.
magic that comes from
And
hospitality.
it's tough. And it's tough to do that when you're there, when most of your guests are there for a celebration. How do you keep reinventing yourself to up the game and really do something special and individualized for each guest? It's the same with the Leela Palace Udaipur. And if you haven't been, you must go there on your next visit to India.
Absolutely, and our trip to Bhutan is still something I can't believe
Yeah,
happened. I mean, a hard to access place, both physically and financially, to be a part of the opening teams. We were opening the Le Meridian there, to have Gray Malin there with us shooting. I mean, what an incredible,
yeah.
life-changing cultural experience, right?
It was a transformative experience, I think. And also, like you said, Katie, a very, very challenging market. I mean, you remember for the shoot, we had to get those gas cylinders there. What a nightmare it was to
Yes,
figure that out.
yes,
But the hotel team's attitude and willingness to support is what made it really possible for us to pull off something like that. And so
absolutely.
many such experiences around the world. I think with my experience in Africa, I can go on and on because those were very, very challenging markets. It's not easy to open hotels in remote locations there. It's not easy to navigate the challenges that you have with the government, with the owners, with the people. But these are all life learnings and very, very special.
Yeah, and for the listeners, what Anjali was just referencing with Bhutan, we had the incredible photographer Gray Malin there with us, and he had this incredible idea to do a shoot with balloons, set within the Bhutanese landscape. And especially for someone like myself coming from New York, where you can have anything delivered at any time of day, you forget that sometimes things aren't available at the drop of a hat. Something like helium, we were not able to get in Bhutan, and it actually had to be trucked in from neighboring India, right,
Yeah.
Anjali? Yeah, absolutely. But you're right. The hotel team didn't say we can't. They said, let's figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah,
So changing
exactly.
changing tacks from these incredible experiences and memories that we have, a lot of them shared together. What has been the worst hospitality experience that you've ever had?
I think I'll go back to what I said earlier. I don't think there are any worst experiences just because of the nature of the jobs that we were in. I think when we were privileged to, like I said, travel to the best locations, the best destinations, experience the best brands, and the hotel teams always went out of their way to really, really take care of you. Um, there was very little experience that at least I have had outside of the brands that I have worked with. So I'm not able to pick on that. So I wouldn't say that there's really a worst experience. I think it's just the degree of personalization and that intent of the team that varies. Some teams are more motivated and really make it very, very special for you as they do for other guests. Some probably not to that extent. But I don't think there has been any worst experience that at least I have had. Not so far.
Well, that's good. I hope that streak continues for sure. And
I hope so too.
what does hospitality mean to you? And is there anyone, any person, any brand that you feel like has truly mastered it?
Hospitality to me is all about people. I think the ancient Indian credo of Atiti Devo Bhava, guest is God, is what defines hospitality, placing the guest at the center of everything we do, and then curating everything around what that guest really needs. And I think the Indian brands really do a great job of that, whether it's Leela or Oberoi or Taj. I know I keep talking about the Indian brands, but I think the testament is the kind of accolades that the service from India has received around the world. I think that's a testament. So to me, it's all about people. To me, it's all about that service with a heart and a soul, and that genuineness that really makes a guest feel special and makes them want to come back again and again.
And speaking of heart and soul, it has just been such a joy to get to reconnect with you today and speak with you. Thank you so much again for your time.
Likewise, Katie, such a pleasure, and thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone, it's time for today's sweet summary where I break down the key insights and actionable takeaways from today's conversation. First of all, isn't Anjali just the best? She always has this incredible blend of like mother hen energy while also being an absolute brilliant marketer and communicator. I just adore talking to her. To me, there were three things that stood out from my conversation with Anjali. The first is that you can really only get to know people, places, and cultures by traveling and ideally by living someplace. For her, it started when she moved around every 2 years as a child. And that culminated in living in and working in different countries and continents around the world. She also brought up the senior leadership team relocation that we used to work on at Starwood, an incredibly powerful exercise where a global corporation believed that the best way for its leaders to understand the markets it was expanding into and doing business within was to pick up and move themselves. The second point is around the importance of branding. She spoke about how she sees brands as living, breathing, and evolving beings, that there's so much more than just a logo or a set of brand colors and fonts, and that good brands have a distinctive point of view. That brands with incredible legacies, they don't need to sit stagnant and they can build on that. And thirdly, she talked about how hospitality at its core is a people business, that AI could and should empower the experience, but it will never replace the humans in our business. That hospitality, including luxury hospitality, is all about the intangible. That we're living in an experience economy where money can't buy experiences are being prioritized over physical goods, and that's not going to change. Anjali joked that her blood type is H positive, hospitality positive, and I couldn't agree more. She left me thinking about how hospitality is more than just a career, it's a calling, as cheesy as that might sound. And I asked her about her worst hospitality experience. She highlighted something pretty profound. She couldn't actually pinpoint a single bad instance, but she did say it was palpable when a hotel team poured their heart into their work and when they didn't. It's that genuine care and dedication that defines exceptional hospitality and makes all the difference.